You know, The Grapes of Wrath, it's one of those books that just stays with you. I remember reading it in high school, and the image of the Joad family just packed up in that rickety truck, all their worldly possessions, headed towards an uncertain future. It stuck with me. I felt like I was on that journey right alongside them. And well, today that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take a deep dive into Steinbeck's masterpiece using these sources that you shared with us.
Yeah, it's such a powerful story, and it all starts with how Steinbeck just captures that sense of the Dust Bowl. It wasn't just like a natural disaster. It was really a combination of human actions, like all those unsustainable farming practices. And then you combine that with just the greed of the banks, and it turned into this catastrophe.
Yeah, you really feel like you're right there in that Oklahoma landscape, like the earth is just parched. And Steinbeck, he describes the sun scorching the earth and those dust storms. They turn day into night. It feels apocalyptic.
And then he introduces these really chilling figures. The ownerments.
Yeah.
It's like they're these faceless representatives of the banks just going around evicting families from their home.
They're like robots. No empathy.
Just carrying out the orders of the system.
And that's where that line comes in, right? The bank. The monster has to have profits all the time. It can't wait. It'll die. It's like this abstract force that's just consuming people's lives.
Absolutely. And he makes it even more real with the image of the tractor, this symbol of progress, just brutally crushing a tenant farmer's house like a bug.
Oh, yeah.
So it sets the stage for that exodus, the Joad's flight from a land that just can't sustain them anymore.
And that's when we meet the Joads.
Right.
This family that represents the resilience and the struggles of so many during the Depression. There's Tom. He's just been paroled from prison for killing a man in a fight, and he comes back to a family on the verge of losing everything.
Right.
You can already sense that rebellious streak in him, can't you?
Absolutely. And each character is so masterfully crafted by Steinbeck. Each one represents a different facet of the human spirit. There's Ma. She's the heart of the family, holding everything together. Then there's Pa, trying to maintain his authority in a world that's just falling apart around
Sort
him.
of grumbling.
And then there's young Rose of Sharon. She's pregnant with her first child, and it's like this little flicker of hope for the future.
Even the ex-preacher, Jim Casey, he's wrestling with his faith, searching for meaning. It's like each character is carrying a piece of the American dream, and now it's just been shattered, scattered.
And before they even leave Oklahoma, they have to leave behind their neighbor, Muley Graves. This man, driven to the edge by the loss of his land, he becomes this symbol of the psychological toll of the Dust Bowl. It's not just about economics. It's about losing a way of life.
Yeah, it's that loss of belonging.
Right.
It really is a reminder that the human cost of all of this, it goes beyond the numbers. And then as they head west, the Joads encounter another harsh reality, the used car lot. They need transportation. But these salesmen, they're unscrupulous.
They're just waiting to prey on them.
Exactly.
It's another example of Steinbeck's social commentary. The sawdust to hide the noisy engine parts, the inflated prices. It's all designed to exploit those who are vulnerable. The Joads start to realize that the road to California, it might be paved with more hardship than opportunity.
And on that road, they meet the Wilsons, another family just like theirs, running from the Dust Bowl. And this encounter foreshadows what they're going to face together. Grandma's death, the burial. Even in the midst of this tragedy, they find solace, just in being human together.
Yeah, and what's really remarkable is how these migrant families create these communities along the way, setting up their tents, sharing. There's a rhythm in all the chaos. It's resilience. They find connection and support in the most desperate circumstances.
I love the way Steinbeck describes those evenings, around the campfire, the music, the stories. It gives them a sense of purpose, even for a little while, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. But as they approach California, there's a sense of foreboding. Like, the promised land may not be so welcoming after all.
They get there, the Joads, with thousands of other migrants. But California, it's not what they hope for. It's a harsh reality.
It's like they've just traded one hardship for another.
California, it's a land of contrasts. You have all that beauty. But at the same time, there's this brutal exploitation. The fields are fertile, the orchards are full of fruit, but for the migrants, it's not like that.
It doesn't take long for that promise to turn sour, because underneath it all, there's a system that's working against them.
Yeah, it's rigged. The agricultural industry back then, it was all dependent on cheap labor, people they could exploit. And the Joads, they get caught in this web. The wages are low, it's hard to find work.
Right.
And the Californians who are already there, they're hostile.
They see them as a threat.
Yeah.
I remember that scene at the diner. The waitress, May, she's kind to those hungry kids. And her boss, he scolds her for it.
Right.
Just a little bit of compassion, but it's like a crack in the system.
It shows you how deep that exploitation goes. Even basic decency, it's a threat. They want to keep the migrants desperate, dependent.
So they're easier to control.
Exactly. But Steinbeck, he doesn't just show them as victims. There's this resistance, a fight for dignity that starts to emerge in those Hooverville camps.
Right.
Those camps, they become more than just a place to stay. They're like your crucible. That's where you see the beginnings of collective action.
Like the Central Committee.
Yeah, like that. The attempts to govern themselves.
That goes all those labor movements.
Exactly. And Tom, he's drawn to this. He's got that rebellious streak. That scene where he gets in that fight with the deputy, you can feel that frustration.
He's got that past, killing that man back in Oklahoma. It's like violence. It just follows him.
Yeah. And then there's Jim Casey. He goes from a preacher who's lost his faith to almost a messianic figure.
It's really interesting, isn't it? That transformation.
He becomes the voice for those who don't have one. Hope and sacrifice. He sees the migrants, their dignity, and he fights for them, even if it means putting himself in danger.
It's like he's taking on the sins of the world, like Christ did.
Yeah. And his sacrifice, it inspires others to fight for what's right.
And then Steinbeck, he really builds up the tension, doesn't he? The Hooverville camp, they burn it down. Tom, he has to hide. And then there's that flood.
That flood.
What a symbol. Like the world is against them, washing away everything they have left.
It's destructive, but it's also cleansing in a way. It takes away their possessions. But it symbolizes the possibility of something new, of washing away the old ways, the ways that failed them.
Like they're being baptized by hardship.
Yeah. And through it all, there's Rose of Sharon. She's pregnant. It's this little bit of hope, but it's a fragile hope. There's hunger, disease, despair.
Steinbeck, he uses these incredibly vivid details to bring it all to life. Like Muley's rants back in Oklahoma, that grief and anger.
Losing his land. It wasn't just about the property. It was his way of life. It was everything.
That connection to the land. And then there's that scene with Tom and the turtle.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a small moment, but so powerful. He picks it up, carries it for a bit, then sets it free.
Resilience.
Yeah.
Adaptation. Even the smallest creatures can endure, find a way to survive.
And then Grandpa dies. They bury him by the side of the road. It's a sad scene, but it's also real. It's the reality they face.
Death. It's always there with them.
And then Casey's sacrifice. He steps in to save Tom and gets arrested. You know then that that's it for him.
It's a turning point.
It's heartbreaking, but it shows his commitment to justice. He's willing to die for what he believes in.
It's like Christ's sacrifice. Compassion, solidarity. And then that final scene, Rose of Sharon, she's lost her baby, and she offers her milk to that starving man.
Oh, it's just seared into your memory.
Pure compassion. In the midst of all that suffering, a bit of hope in the darkness.
It makes you wonder, what happened to them? Did they ever find that better world? Did the Joads find a place where they could finally belong?
That's what's so powerful about Steinbeck. He doesn't give you all the answers. It's up to us to think about what happened to them.
I keep thinking about Tom's words. When he says, wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. It's like he's fighting for everyone who's been pushed aside, everyone struggling to survive.
That's a line that goes beyond the book.
Yeah.
It speaks to that fight for justice, that fight against exploitation and inequality. Those are themes that never really go away.
That's true. You can see those same struggles today. Migrant workers, families barely getting by, communities dealing with poverty. It's like the Joad story is still happening.
Yeah, Steinbeck's work reminds us that these issues are still here. Maybe they look different, but they're still here. And he makes us face those hard truths. He makes us see what it's like for those who are pushed to the margins.
But even though there's all this hardship in The Grapes of Wrath, it's not a totally hopeless book.
Right. There's also this amazing resilience. Steinbeck shows us how powerful community can be, the importance of family, and how love and compassion can exist even in the darkest times.
Madge Joad is a perfect example. She holds the family together. They're facing starvation. They've lost their home, but she never loses sight of what matters. Her love for her family, her belief that things can get better.
She's that unbreakable spirit that Steinbeck writes about.
Yeah.
She refuses to give up. She finds strengths in connection, in hope.
So for us, the listeners, why does this book still matter? It was written almost 100 years ago. It's a different time, a different place.
Because the Joad's story is more than just about the past. It's about what it means to be human. It's about the fight to live with dignity. And it reminds us that we're all connected, that we have to take care of each other. We have to work for a better world.
It's like a call to action, right? To do something, to make a difference, to stand up for those who are mistreated, to fight injustice wherever we see it.
Steinbeck doesn't tell us exactly what to do. He makes us ask the hard questions. How do we fight injustice? How do we create a world where everyone can have a good life? What does it mean to live a life full of compassion?
The Grapes of Wrath, it stays with you, it challenges you, it inspires you. And in the end, it reminds you that we can overcome anything, even the hardest things.
And as we wrap up our deep dive, we hope you'll keep thinking about these things, about empathy and compassion, and how you can be a part of building a more just world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the Grapes of Wrath with us. The resilience, the fight for justice, and the incredible strength of the human spirit.